Gross McGinley LLP, attorneys at law, dedicated people, innovative minds, professional service. Back at it again. We're talking a little sports law today. So excited for you to be joining us. And with me today is Michael Horvath and Jacob Oldaker from Gross McGinley LLP. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. And a great backdrop, by the way, over there at where are you guys hanging out today?
Go Birds. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Scott. Good to be here.
Go Birds. Sports and social there in Allentown. So thanks for hanging out with us today. So we've got a pretty interesting conversation. I was fortunate enough to play college athletics about 20 years ago, and man, has that landscape changed quite a bit since then, as we're going to get into talking about NILs, name, image, and likeness deals today. Jacob, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. For anybody that's unfamiliar with that, maybe you're a parent whose kid is getting into high school or college sports and maybe looking to play at the next level. What the heck does that mean, NIL?
Yeah, sure. So, I just want to first comment too and say, I played soccer in college, so the landscape has changed tremendously. Name, image, likeness. We're going to use NIL a lot, the abbreviation for that, but it's truly an opportunity for these college athletes to benefit and receive money for their name, image, and likeness. You're looking at $1 billion industry where these athletes haven't been able to receive any money for the longest of time without jeopardizing their eligibility, risk of NCAA violations. So it's a huge shift and super exciting. Like you said, up and coming players, there's so much to unwind here, but from high school to all levels of collegiate athletes. Like it's really a great opportunity.
It's interesting from playing that far back. We were kind of talking as we were getting ready to go here. It was like if you got your face on the magnet, or like we had the buses in Philly, like if you got your face on the bus, it was like, well, all right, we did it.
Yeah,
but now you can get paid for all that stuff. Right. So, Michael, kind of dive in a little deeper for me here, because it can be some complicated stuff, especially look, I was the first person in my family to even go to college, let alone go on and be a college athlete. The whole process of transitioning from high school to college can be an interesting one at best, as maybe you're looking around at different schools, looking around at different opportunities that maybe weren't present for people 5-10 years ago. How can a sports law attorney kind of help avoid any sort of hiccups, mishaps, misunderstandings when it comes to an NIL kind of deal?
Right, and it's in a myriad of different ways. So it's a very complex landscape because it's all new. I mean, this has only been going on since July 1st, 2021 is when the decision came down that athletes could monetize their NIL. So it hasn't even been 3 years from the time that we're talking right now. Because of that, the regulation of it has just not been very good, and it hasn't progressed the way that a lot of people thought it would. Congress has refused to take actions. So essentially what's been going on is the NCAA has adopted interim policies. Not every state, but a lot of states have adopted their own rules and laws behind NIL. And athletes and conferences, athletic departments and conferences have done similar things. So you have all these different sets of rules. They're not uniform, and players are expected to comply with all of them. So from our perspective as NIL attorneys, we're helping navigate that landscape, ensuring that our athletes are in compliance and that they're eligible to continue participating in college athletics. Because at the end of the day, that's the goal. It's not for you to, while it is to make money off your NIL, you have to be playing in order to do that. Because if you're not, then who's really going to sign you to a deal anyway? So it really is compliance with all these different laws. Just making sure that we keep you eligible and in the best position possible to monetize your NIL.
Jacob, I'm going to pivot over to you a little bit, because as we talk about a world of the transfer portal, and we're talking about how different states have different rules, and maybe you're a guy or girl in a small school that has a great season, smaller conference, smaller school, maybe you're drawn to those bigger lights of the bigger conferences, and there's possibly some NIL deals that are out there for you. Just somebody in your spot that can kind of help a student, a family navigate in these situations, because I have to feel like there's probably some kids out there. Listen, there's a lot of 5-star recruits who know something's going to be coming their way. Then there's probably a bunch of kids who might go to smaller school in a MAC conference, a smaller conference somewhere, that all of a sudden somebody wants to come to them and say, hey, we'd like to use your name, image, and likeness to help sponsor whatever it might be. In addition to the fact that, you guys keep mentioning that different states have different laws, that could be a lot to juggle right there. So for somebody in your position that can help somebody very unfamiliar with the situation, how can you help navigate there for folks?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first thing to think about is this is all collegiate sports, JUCO, D1, D2, D3. I think a lot of people, think about those Power Five conferences or the five-star athletes. It's not just for them, and we're talking men's and women's sports. Both genders are, killing it in NIL. So that's the first thing to think about. We have a lot of, 2-3-star recruits. They're probably the best player in their hometown. Those are NIL opportunities. When you start thinking about compliance, obviously, like Mike said, it's kind of the well, I'll use the term Wild Wild West, the cemented NIL term, but it's just looking at the specific state laws, the specific athletic conference that student is thinking about going to participate in, and just making sure you're complying with those rules that are in place there.
Can we talk about, Michael? I'm going to pivot over to you here. High school. I mean, this felt like it started with collegiate athletes. High school, as we talk about different states kind of having different rules and what it means in NIL, the eligibility for college athletes or high school athletes. Just, it feels like you kind of hear in a world of social media, all of a sudden you'll hear about this 14-year-old phenom or this 16-year-old phenom who's on the come up. NIL deals for high school kids. I mean, is that... depending on different states that you're in, a possibility. But certainly when you're trying to look at your future, when you're 14, 16 years old and you've got the opportunity to maybe make money for your family, it's got to be a great opportunity. There's got to be a lot of confusion. Can you kind of talk about maybe a little bit of the difference between a high school student that's maybe getting into these waters versus a college student that's maybe getting into this a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so surprisingly, high school actually might be a little easier because every high school every high school athletic association is governed by their states. For example, Pennsylvania is the PIAA, and all states pretty much have that regulating body of high school athletics within their state or commonwealth. So really, in Pennsylvania, they're one of many states now who are passed the high school NIL law. A lot of them still have not. I think Pennsylvania became the 20th one last November when they did so. And the rule, honestly, is very similar to the college rule as far as the regulation of what athletes can do and can't do, what they can market and can't market. Really, the difference is the parental involvement. For example, if you have a high schooler who's under 18 years of age, well, they're not at the age of consent. So the contracts become a little more difficult. Additionally, you can't... It's at the time the recruiting was a tool as well that was being used in some of these charter schools. So you can't be induced to play at a certain high school, just like you can't be induced to play at a certain college based on the NIL opportunities that perhaps a booster club or a board was offering.
Can we talk? I think as we kind of talk about the combo of high school and college here, the idea of the amateur athlete, your status. We keep using the eligibility term here, and that can be a lot to try to understand for a kid who probably is just learning to drive a car. So just the idea of your amateur athlete status versus, look, I mean, I don't know the percentage offhand of how many kids actually go on and play professional sports. It's a very small number. But if you can get your bread while you're in college or high school and go ahead and get it, that's amazing. Jacob, I'm going to start with you. Just kind of the idea of an amateur athlete and what that means in terms of their possibility of going pro and what hiccups might be there if they are trying to sign an NIL deal.
Yeah, so super loaded question. So Wednesday in North Carolina, there were 3 antitrust cases that just settled. They still need to be approved by the court, but they just approved revenue sharing with athletes now, wherein the universities can now revenue share with athletes. It's super interesting and it's super loaded, so I don't want to get too into the weeds, but they're imposing a $22 million cap based on the revenue generated by the universities. So now, arguably, these schools have salary caps for their athletes, So, that idea of amateurism, I don't want to say it's dead, but, we're flirting with it,
it's
right?
It's going away quickly.
It's going away quickly. But, to kind of touch on your question, I hate to keep using, the eligibility term, but it's just all about compliance. That's what Mike and I do. We ensure you're following your state laws, we're working with the right brands. Mike kind of touched on this earlier. There's specific brands that athletes can't be sponsored or get NIL deals with. So it's becoming littler things as far as that jeopardizing your amateurism in college sports. There's so much changing that it's kind of hard to address that outside of just following the rules that are there, and just maintaining that compliance to the best of your ability.
We're talking with our friends at Gross McGinley LLP, attorneys at law, Michael Horvath and Jacob Oldaker from the sports law section there of Gross McGinley. I know you guys have a lot of things to offer there at Gross McGinley LLP as we focus on NIL deals and sports. It's fascinating. We kind of mentioned the boon of men and women's sports recently. I mean, look at the women's NCAA tournament, basketball tournament, Caitlin Clark all over the place. Interested. One of the things that came out was her rookie contract when she went on to the Indiana Fever in the WNBA. And I'm interested what your perspectives are on players actually. Look, I think every college coach, especially with a transfer portal right now, all of the elements that they have to do, would love for kids to stay at their institution for 4 years to try to put what they would consider the class that they recruited, the best prospects out there, to hopefully give them success to be the best coach that they can be. Michael, I'm going to turn to you. Is that something that you could see becoming the norm for a lot of kids as this financial change is coming to college sports? Do you see more kids possibly staying in school for 4 years and looking to kind of cash in on those NIL deals? Because maybe you're looking at yourself as, let's say, a football player. You're seeing yourself as a 7th round undrafted kind of pick, might get invited to camp, might make a team, or I could stay at large conference school, whatever school I'm in, where I'm kind of the guy, make my money over 4 years and kind of finish out my education. Do you kind of see that maybe being one of the positive shifts in the college landscape of kids staying in school longer?
Absolutely. And as not just a NIL attorney, but as an avid sports fan myself, collegiate sports fan, I think it's awesome for all the sports. I think it's going to make a big difference, especially in basketball, where athletes can be, as you know, one and done. Now, don't get me wrong, the one and done athletes in collegiate basketball, a lot of them they're going to be top 5, top 10, top 15 picks. So for them, I still think going professional outweighs staying a couple more years. But as far as the majority of athletes, you're correct that staying and building your brand is going to go a long way. A great example of this is actually Sean Clifford from Penn State University. Sean Clifford, after his 5th year, well, and obviously there was eligibility rules and COVID issues that affected how many years he could play. But after his 5th year, he probably could have entered the draft and maybe gone in the 7th round or tried to try out as an undrafted free agent. Maybe that's what he would have done if NIL wasn't a thing. Instead, he went back to Penn State and played his 6th year. He had a great year, and he built probably the biggest NIL brand that Penn State has still to this day. So he was able to really capitalize on NIL by doing it in several different ways that probably would not have been available to him had NIL never came to fruition in 2021. And
sure.
To add on the comment about Caitlin Clark, I mean, yes, like her salary, is what it is for that first year, but the money that she is able to make in her first year as a rookie in the WNBA, all that is attributed to NIL because she built probably the greatest NIL brand that I've ever seen. One of them, at least, and that transitioned over to more professional brands in the professional sports arena, wanting to sponsor her as well. And now, I mean, yes, her salary is low for her first year rookie contract, but my goodness, is she making a lot of money on endorsements and whatnot?
I think her Nike deal's over $20 million. And I think just something to not to cut Mike off, but something to comment on there is you look at Caitlin Clark and what she built at her time at Iowa. she built reputation with these brands through NIL. So, something we look for, and just something to think about for the listeners is, you don't want to see an NIL deal that's exclusive or extends beyond your playing days in college. So just something to think about. Caitlin Clark has a Nike deal. I know she stayed with Nike, so she has a Nike NIL deal. Nike puts an exclusivity provision in there. Now she goes pro. She's stuck with Nike. She doesn't have that free market opportunity to go out there and see what she can feel.
Excellent information there, fellas. We mentioned the college basketball landscape a little bit. I know I graduated from LaSalle, so I keep up with the basketball teams there. A lot of international players have kind of made their way through LaSalle in the last few years. NIL deals and kind of how it affects an international player. I'm sure visas probably are a big part of that whole process. Again, are we talking about complicated, but you just got to look through the fine print here, or is it maybe a little bit more difficult for an international player to kind of find that kind of success over here stateside?
It is because of the type of visa. So essentially, when international players come over, they generally have a student, or what's called a student or education visa. So they're permitted to be in the United States on whether it's a scholarship or just attending university as it is. What you need for NIL is actually more similar to a work permit. So there's actually a lot of lawyers that have specialized in immigration who have turned to this issue to help their clients be able to obtain both permits so that they can earn money and attend school at the same time. But without that, it actually is a little more difficult than you would think for international players to come here and monetize their NIL.
Fellas, this was an excellent conversation. We're talking to the part of the sports law team with Gross McGinley LLP, attorneys at law, dedicated people, innovative minds, professional service. This isn't all you guys do over there. It's not just NIL deals. You guys have your hands in a lot of different things. Your sports law department, we'll call it. Can you fellas elaborate a little bit on what you can offer to people out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sports law is, a fun term. We get to tell our friends and family we do sports law, but, really it's just an application of our business knowledge, corporate work that we're already doing day in and day out. Obviously, you have different laws, different regulations you're looking at, but, it's still that contract formation. It's still that negotiation, that arbitration, whatever it may be. So, we just get to apply our legal knowledge and our primary practice groups to something that we're both super passionate about, which is sports law.
Yeah, it is sports law and NIL. NIL is a big part of it, and we stay up to date on everything and anything NIL and try to push out blogs and keep our the local area informed about what's going on. Like Jake said, it is sports law as well. It's a practice of law applied to the sports industry that we've become very accustomed with. So it's a great service that we're offering over here, and we're very proud of it.
Excellent, fellas. Well, if this is a path that you're crossing, if it is something that you're looking at, again, I'll just speak from my own personal experience, the process of getting recruited, looking at schools, my parents never having gone through that process themselves, not having any brothers or sisters do it. I think if we all sat down together and could reflect on it, we would like a lot more people to help us out with that process. And certainly, as we've discussed for the last 20 minutes or so, the process of a college athlete has changed quite a bit. So you gentlemen are certainly people that have an enormous amount of information, especially with the current landscape of college sports. And I want to thank you both for your time today. Michael Horvath and Jacob Oldaker, thank you so much, fellas. Appreciate all the information on NIL deals.
You got it. Thanks so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. They are with Gross McGinley LLP, attorneys at law, dedicated people, innovative minds, professional service. Get more information at grossmcginley.com. My name is Kevin Crockett. Thanks so much for learning about NIL deals with us today. Have a great day, everybody.